Do I have someone to move that?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Who knows? Who knows? It was so long ago.
Michael, will you second that?
I will, and I point out to you, if you have a mover and a seconder, you have a majority already.
Indeed. Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. So let's carry then. And other comments, I don't see that we have any members of the public with us tonight. So let's move on to item 4 then. Council referrals. And this is the rezoning application for Area 1 of CD18 Arbutus Ridge. I have some questions about this, Daniel, but maybe you could just give us a little bit of color on this first.
Sure. I have just a short presentation that I think is in your agenda too, but I can talk you through it, and feel free to stop and ask questions as we go, and then.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question before you start.
Go for it.
Well, when the map comes up, because it's really kind of unclear. There appear to be 3 areas, all called Area 1.
Yeah. Yes.
And I'm assuming that that's not actually accurate.
It is the case. I've gotten that question a lot, and all I can say is I didn't do the zoning.
The mapping.
For it. Yeah. Yeah, so this is a rezoning application for Area 1 of CD18. So CD18 is the Arbutus Ridge Comprehensive Development Zone. It's located off of Windjammer. It's now there if you see Joan Audrey Lane come up in the West Side Playground. Can you see my mouse cursor if I do this?
Yes.
Okay. So Joan Audrey Lane comes up the middle. Area 3 is essentially zoned for open space and parks. Is this sort of strange shapes to the middle? And then Area 1 is in 1 portion, 2 portion, and 3 portions. So there's 3 areas that comprise of Area 1 in the zoning. Area 2 is zoned for cottage residential development, which is governed by a housing agreement. And then Area 3 is, like I said, park and open space. And Area 1 is where the sort of the bulk of the like the standard residential development takes place, and is the subject of this rezoning application. So there's just an ortho photo taken in, I think it's 2018 is the date of it. So you can see Joan Audrey Lane has been put in, and you can see, you kind of can't make out super clearly, but this is just showing BOMAP and showing that these lots in this area have been created by subdivision, and the lots in this part of Area 1 have been created by subdivision. And then the bulk of this remains unsubdivided.
So, sorry, could I jump in on just?
Yeah.
I also went to BOMAP and had a look at this, and it doesn't, the boundaries don't seem to follow the first diagram. Is that?
Yeah, the boundary sort of on the south side of Joan Audrey Lane, where these sort of parent parcels are, don't exactly match the area boundaries. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And there's within, so and the comprehensive development envisions 38 lots in these 3 areas.
Yeah.
Which is a whole other question that I have. But, okay.
Yeah, so the CD18 zoning was completed in 2013 or 2014. It permits, the Area 1 permits detached dwelling, open space, public trails, uses accessory to principal uses, domestic agriculture. It permits up to 38 dwellings in the zone. And then crucially for this application, it does not permit accessory residential use, which is how our land use bylaw permits secondary suites, both attached and detached. So this zone, the 38 dwellings are not permitted secondary suites.
So these wouldn't be done as bare land strata parcels then, is that correct? Or sorry, bare land, they might be done as bare land strata parcels.
They could be.
There won't be 38 parcels of land.
There would be, so currently all the lots created have been fee simple, and all our active subdivisions in the area are fee simple lots.
Okay.
I think at some points the developer has envisioned bare land strata development, but has instead done fee simple. But either would be permitted in the zoning.
Okay. So nothing in your package shows parcel layout for the large area. I'm just curious how they could possibly get 38 sites here and how.
Yeah, how they're already in place in the two top area ones, Daniel? You said part of it had already been subdivided.
Yeah. So the sort of the area right off of Windjammer, this little one has got has got 2 lots.
Yeah.
This little area has got 7 in a cul-de-sac at the top of Joan Audrey Lane. So that's 9. The developer, so when this was rezoned, it was one developer owned this large parcel, and this is owned by then a private landowner. And so the allocation is that there'd be 4 lots in this portion, in this little triangle, and then 34 between these 3 areas. So 7 have been created, so it leaves 27, I believe.
So there's 25 lots that are imagined in that
In that
parcel?
part of area 1, yeah.
Wow, okay.
How many acres?
Sorry, Kirsty.
How many acres is it, Daniel?
I'm not sure off the top. I could measure it, but I'm not sure.
But I was just interested in whether the area was big enough. Like there's no secondary dwelling allowed in lots under something or other. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, so lots under 0.36 hectares or 0.9 acres are not permitted detached secondary suites, but are, like on the rest of the island, would be permitted attached secondary suites within the dwelling. Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to change this to is whether it's detached or attached, just to allow them.
Yeah. And then what the proposal is that the normal regulations would apply. So the same lot size would apply.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So part of what I brought to council is just a review of our other zones and see, are there other zones that don't permit accessory residential use? And what I found is primarily it's areas within the Snug Cove and areas that are, multifamily housing. So Artisan Square or the zoning for the pub, townhouses that are below the municipal hall and above Village Square. What else is this? Yeah, those are primarily the areas, or Foxglove Lane, so around Snug Cove House development, are places that don't permit secondary suites. Other than one area in Hood Point doesn't permit them, but other than that.
And Cowan's Point, where is
Cowan
area
Point.
9?
Area 9 of CD6 is like Seymour Shores. Some of the end of Seymour Drive, I believe, is area 9. So it's sort of where the denser commercial retail uses are envisioned as well.
Got it.
Yeah. Do you know why these areas do not permit accessory residential use? Is it just a historical accident, or were there reasons given?
Yeah, like some of them I can think of. Like I could think easily, well, the pub, it's like we allow a certain number of dwellings. They're meant to be like apartment dwellings. I don't know, like why there's an area in Hood Point that doesn't permit them.
Yeah,
I'm not sure, but primarily it's where we envision like denser development. We don't permit them.
Whereas the accessory use is something that has been attached to single-family residential zoned properties.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, correct?
Typically, yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious if the thrust of this development is ultimately going to be a bunch of single-family residential lots, why it was done as a CD at all. But
yeah, I mean, I know.
Sorry.
Sort of the rezoning application and envision was essentially, increased density in exchange for park dedication and trails and yeah, and a question council had at the time, and a question like at the time when I introduced this to council, a question, a number of the committees I've gone to have had is essentially, do you know why it wasn't permitted secondary suites when it was rezoned? And I always have to say, I don't have an answer at this point. Why? Like I've sort of looked at the council reports when the rezoning was done. It's sort of not mentioned, like when it was first introduced, it wasn't included as a use in the zone, and it continued to not be included.
Right. I guess my question is why it's not RR1. but,
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
Um,
the applicant would have had to request the accessory, right?
if it was an RR1 zoning, then they would automatically have
yeah.
accessory use.
And I mean, other CD zones, although we haven't done, I guess if this is CD18, there hasn't been another CD zone other than Grafton Lake.
Since.
Like another CD zone, which is sort of single family homes since then, whereas, you know, one's already done, were included in the secondary suite bylaw. So when we did secondary suites, it was included that they were permitted secondary suites. And then when we did the detached secondary suites, we just went through and everywhere that permitted secondary suites, we changed it to permit accessory residential use so they could have detached secondary suites as an option, but it wasn't expanded to any.
I guess what I'm trying to understand here, mine out of this is, was it done as a comprehensive development in order to achieve smaller lot sizes than would be permitted if it were an SR2, SR1, or RR designation?
Yes, there'll be
That
smaller
was
than
the
SR2.
goal, was to have smaller lot sizes.
Yeah.
And now there's a request to have accessory use and buildings potentially on these smaller lots.
Yeah.
So the net result of that is you have a smaller lot and even higher density.
Yeah.
But they aren't particularly small lots, are they?
Well, that's what I'm been trying to determine. There's
I
no-
think, Drew, weren't we involved in this and they were gonna do that strange little farm thing and it was gonna be, am I in the wrong area? But
No, you got it right. That's the supportive housing and service.
yeah.
Right.
And so that's why it ended up with all these bizarre,
Yes.
you know, like it was because of that little piece of it, I thought and I don't think we ever suggested no secondary housing, but somebody must have.
Yeah,
Well,
I think
I
sorry.
wonder if the applicant just didn't ask for it. But in any event, we don't know. So Daniel, if it's 93 acres in total, do we know how much is going to be dedicated for park? And then maybe we can work backwards from that.
Yeah, let me just stop sharing.
In general, though, I don't see a problem with, I guess you call it upzoning, but allowing secondary suites, because that seems to be the direction that we want to go in to enable, you know, more smaller, you know, places for people to live.
Yeah, more potentially affordable housing.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that all of that is premised on a concept of particular lot size. And when I look at this without seeing a layout of the lots and how they will be accessed and so on, it's difficult for me to imagine that there's area there for 29 ordinary size lots.
But you know, it's if you look at it globally, and I have to get my calculator out here, if 93 acres divided by 38 lots. Yeah, so that's 2.4 acres. That's about a hectare, isn't it? If I remember my conversion. Per dwelling. And you know, in a way, in a funny kind of way, this is almost a cluster development.
So that's, yeah, when you look at it from that perspective, it's definitely, that's low density.
Yeah.
But I guess two of the parcels are already spoken for and they're already, the lot configuration's already been allocated. So we're actually looking at the remainder parcel, which will have.
And we don't have that calculation, but that would be useful.
Or have those lots are being purchased and then somebody's going to then, whoever bought the bigger piece of property, this 7 acre, I'm making it up, are they gonna then be able to subdivide into 5 or whatever?
Yeah, let me just I'll just continue this.
The subject, let's just back all the way up. So the subject of this is actually the largest of the 3 area ones. Or would that be areas 1?
Yeah, I mean, the zoning would permit then the other 2 areas. Like some of the houses in those areas are under construction, but they could potentially then add a secondary suite within the building.
Daniel, why don't you show that, I think it's on just a photo, some of the lines of the lots that have already been defined.
Yeah,
So
from
people
Google
can
Map.
see.
Yeah.
There, you can see them. It's very faint lines
Yeah.
Right.
up at the top.
But I guess what I'm trying to imagine, so that's 9 lots. And so which means that there are 29 lots that need to be developed within this parcel. And the triangle at the very bottom already has, what was it, 4 lots in it?
4 lots, yeah.
So there's 25 lots that are going to happen in that parallelogram, which is the remainder piece there. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm just kind of curious. In a way, it sort of feels like coming at this backwards and going, well, we are going to, by default, going to end up with these smaller properties. And does it make sense to allow then greater density on them? Because that's kind of the more of the global goal, or what is the global goal? Or is there some point at which, you know, the property is too small to support either attached or detached?
Well, then they won't get them if they don't meet the minimum lot size for detached, and if they have attached, then who's to even know?
Yeah, and even that attached would be subject to the lot coverage.
Yeah.
So there is a fair bit of regulation anyway.
Mhm.
The one thing that just strikes me is, and I'd love to know why it wasn't included in the first place, because there may be something we're missing, but we're generally in favor of accessory buildings, right?
I'm sorry, what was that, Michael?
I think generally we look at accessory buildings favorably,
Yes.
Yes.
and it seems a bit unfair to single out this one development unless there was a reason for it, and we don't know.
Right. And I suppose if in fact it is self-regulating, if you will, because the properties will be of a certain size anyway, and they will either allow detached, attached, or no accessory use because of their size. That's kind of then I agree. It sort of seems it seems like a bit of a non-issue.
Yeah, and I guess I don't really see the issue about density so much. It's hard to tell, but if that larger area 1 is half the land, and it looks, eyeballing it, looks like it is close to that, that's still over 1.5 acres per lot.
Mhm.
If you do the math. Gee, I wish I know this area fairly well because I walk my dog through there a lot. And at one time they did have signs advertising future lots, and I wish I could remember. My recollection is most of them were sort of 0.5 to 0.9 acre.
Mhm.
Yeah, there was a bunch of, there's along where there's a trail now that goes up to a knoll and looks over the cliff.
Yeah.
The guy, when I was there with a friend looking for a lot, they were envisioned as quite small, narrow lots, and with a few ones that had really weird topography, bigger ones is what I remember from whatever the guy's name is, it's gone blank on me. But they weren't nearly like, they weren't like the size of the lots around the cul-de-sac at all. They were totally different, except for maybe one or something.
Yeah, and that larger CD1 is a bit of a challenging area. There's a little lakes. There's some very steep slopes.
Yeah. I noticed that too. The topography
And
is pretty.
you know, the topography is, I think they're going to have a hard time. Well, they've obviously thought it through, but I think they're going to be very restricted as to the building envelopes. Whereas the part that is being constructed already is, if you like, the flatter area. And I just keep coming back to the fact that we have a lot of protections for appropriate development and construction anyway, outside this single issue.
Yeah, so just include it. Roll on, say yes.
Well,
I found a document from 2013.
thanks, Steph. How do you find out?
It's a letter. You guys used to write letters
Yeah.
from the APC, very in depth. I'd probably be out of a job, but I've emailed it to you all. Maybe we don't want this to become reading club, but I don't see anything about accessory suites in it.
There's
But
nothing
it's
at
got
all
a
about
nice
them?
description of the genesis of the zoning.
Yeah, I think we did, just people have been through various waves of, yes, let's have them, and no, let's not. And maybe that we were in a no, let's not at that time.
Daniel, do you know if this is a kind of the phase 2 of the King Edward Bay development? Do you know if phase 1, which is where David and I live, I don't believe accessory suites are allowed.
This zoning allows them.
Okay, but I think we have building guidelines that.
Yeah, I think there may be either strata rules or
Yeah.
like private covenants that restrict it.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's artifactual or anyway.
I think that's just the strata, Michael. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was just in people's mind that somehow it's classier.
Yeah.
That what's not having them, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, I keep seeing my neighbors' houses listed for sale in prestigious King Edward Bay, and I say,
Uh-huh.
Jesus Christ,
Wow.
that's
You
not
live-
where I live.
You live in prestigious King Edward Bay also.
But it would be unfortunate if this current development is prejudiced by essentially a mistake.
Yeah, I agree.
Did you send us something, Steph? Is that?
Yeah, just that 2013. Maybe you guys have better zoning eyes than I do to see some rationale behind accessories, but having skimmed it, I don't see.
I don't remember us having any conversation on that, just about the little farm and special housing. We had a lot of discussion about that.
There's
Yeah.
there's a piece in here about density, maximum floor area.
Yeah, and the zoning does have a maximum floor area, which is unusual for Bowen.
Right.
But it has a lot coverage and a floor area, and that's not proposed to change as part of the application. So in essence, people would be choosing, to reduce the size of the house to include a secondary suite.
Yeah, there, because it would appear that the floor area ratio would be relatively low.
I
Okay,
think it has an outright number, so it permits. It's like 2,600 square feet.
it's not too low.
That is very low, yeah.
Maximum size of the cottage is 250 square meters.
Yeah. Thanks, Steph. I'm glad you found that. And maybe what's significant about that document is, it's the dog that didn't bark. There is no mention of accessory. So I just don't think it was considered at the time by either the applicant or the, certainly not by the APC, and probably not by council.
Yeah, I mean, I know this came up for the applicants in part because when they got their subdivision PLR, so preliminary layout review, one of the things our approving officer included in that is like, a note that like, as you know, the zoning doesn't permit these, so you're not, they won't be included in the final lots. You have to build them. And they said, wait, what? So
Uh-huh.
here we are.
So what do you need from us, Daniel, or do you have some more to tell us before?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that just the final point was just in the report to council, we talked about conditions. And so conditions that we would address through the rezoning process. And some of that is as part of the subdivision for the lots, we had received things like stormwater management plans and proof of water supply. And so looking for those equivalents of saying, okay, well, if you're now going to build, if lots are big enough for detached secondary suites, can you show that you could manage development of those on the site, or
Okay.
prove the water? And that would be part of the King Edward Bay local advisory committee discussion tomorrow, is about just water supply in the area.
So it is, and I'm thinking that I will approve it on this committee, but vote against it on the other committee,
Ah,
just for balance.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
in terms of
Actually-
reference management.
Yeah, I tell you, water is a serious issue here, because there's the blue water deficiencies, but that's for the other committee to worry about. And we can just cover that off, right, Daniel, with a condition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Without having to go into the substantive question of whether or not there is adequate water.
And the condition's already there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the proposal for septic, or would there be individual septic systems on the
Yep.
lots, or-
That's what it looks like, yeah.
Yeah, currently the current lots are individual septics. Some of in the current subdivision, some of them are on shared septics.
I
Really?
wonder if that's
Yeah.
what they're gonna do with the other, the larger
I don't
CD1.
There's room for it, but the bigger lots around the cul-de-sac all had a designated area for
Yeah.
the field.
Yeah,
I
the
mean-
created lots are all on their own individual. I just know on the active subdivision, a few of the lots are on shared septics instead of.
Yeah, because they'd have to be.
Yeah.
They can only do that as a strata. You can't cross.
Exactly.
Property
Exactly.
You
lines
can-
with them.
No, you can do it. In essence, you create an additional lot that's then covenanted as the septic field for.
But then
some of
doesn't
the other
that
lots
become a
to-
community system? Anyway, it's another conversation that,
Yeah, like, yeah. If you work with coastal health, it's like there's a way to have some common septics.
when you've got steep slopes and properties and I don't know, I can see servicing being a bigger issue here than
Yeah.
anything else.
Yeah, I
Um,
think they're gonna have a challenge. The only good news is it's not on the waterfront.
Right.
But Daniel, can you just comment a little bit about the conditions that are on page 4 of your, why you think you need them? I think I can guess, but
Are these, sorry, I think I have on the slide as well.
water supply,
Yeah, this list. These are essentially items that were flagged during the referral process, primarily from our approving officer, who said during the subdivisions, I mean, the water supply is sort of separate, but the other ones are conditions that were a requirement of subdivision for a single dwelling on each lot. And so her approach was especially for the subdivisions underway, it's that she would want the work done again to encompass, okay, if there's a secondary suite or a detached secondary suite. So
oh, okay, okay.
to make sure that it's not then missed in the subdivision, that we've carefully considered it all for a single dwelling, and then, and suddenly now a suite or a detached secondary suite could be built, and that wanting to make sure that that's included too.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is really not new.
Yeah, it's something that if the zoning allowed secondary suites and they came to subdivide, we would be requiring it, to consider a house that could have a secondary suite in it as part of the subdivision process. And so essentially we're just saying, okay, we would treat it the same way through the rezoning.
Drew, are we, I mean, my sense is that we're generally favorable of it, but my sense is also that there's some pretty key information we're missing, having to do mostly with what the plans are for the unsubdivided portion of
Right.
Area 1. And I don't know, do we need that to?
I'm not sure that we really do. I mean, if it were, I was thinking about this kind of down a slightly different track, but if we're an applicant seeking to rezone a parcel to, I don't know, SR2, they wouldn't have to show a layout necessarily. It's just a parcel with the potential for that for subdivision. I think that's the thing that's kind of got me wondering why it was done as a comprehensive development in the first instance. I just don't quite get that.
Yeah.
It feels to me like where the applicant has gained in this is potentially having smaller lot sizes than would be permitted in any other of the existing zones. And I'm not sure if that's true, Daniel. I may be wrong.
Okay.
And
I mean, so yeah, minimum lot area is 1,500 square meters in the zone.
I can't.
So like a third of an acre is the minimum,
Thank you.
16,000.
I just wish you'd. Okay. And one of the things I'm very conscious of is I don't think it's appropriate for us to run the developer's business for him
right,
or her. We just have to look at it from a regulatory point of view. And
right.
Yes, we may have some real questions about, my goodness, how is he actually going to do this?
That's
but that's his lookout, and you know, we'd be foolish to give advice. Okay.
I only wanted to ensure that we weren't going to be ending up with kind of really quite small parcels, which would nevertheless still be permitted to have two dwellings on them in effect. And that doesn't appear to be where this is all going, so that's fine. And part of that would be a function of the topography and the roads and everything else is going to drive what you can really develop as a property.
Yeah.
These are numbers right now, but I don't think they're going to be able to achieve the number of lots that they want, given all of the other constraints. But that's not our problem.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no.
So I think as to whether secondary uses should be permitted on the properties, I think they're residential in nature. The zone, the properties will be developed as single family properties as they would in an R1 zone or an SR2 zone. So why would they not be allowed to have an accessory use as well?
Agreed.
Agreed.
So all in all, how's that, Daniel?
There you go.
Do you want a letter? We can, Steph.
Yeah, we would like letters now, please.
Steph could do a letter for us.
What's this about letters? Doesn't Steph sort of turn our incoherence
2013
into
we
emotion?
our meetings never ended before 11 o'clock because we wrote letters and everything.
Okay. Anyway, I think we're unanimous.
I think so too. Do we need a motion? Do we need some kind of direction here?
I think the motion that's in the agenda is, so the APC, and then I hear support rezoning
right.
application, blah, blah, blah.
Oh yeah, it looks like copy and paste and cross out do not support.
Good. All in favor?
Good.
Great.
I seem to have lost my agenda here. Why?
Oh,
I've got the paper version, but I didn't print all of it.
Hazardous areas.
I got it. It's in the second email.
Which a fair bit of this is relevant to the development we've just been talking about, actually.
Yeah.
My untrained eye.
Yeah, so we are then moving on to item 5, business arising from the minutes, hazardous areas, DP area draft report findings. And again, Daniel, maybe a little bit of color. Before you dive into this, I had a broad question. And this is really sort of for my education. I have been under the impression that the provincial government had jurisdiction over some, if not all, of these hazardous conditions, streams and rockfall hazards and so on, and that they have a whole process of review that's somehow tied into our DP process. Am I wrong in that? And is it common for a municipality to have its own regulations for each of these categories?
The province has regulations around streams and riparian areas that municipalities can have development permits that, in essence, opt into their regulations,
Right.
like we do, or municipalities can choose not to. Yeah, the province doesn't regulate hazardous development, whereas the Local Government Act gives municipalities authority to have development permits for it's called protection of development from hazardous conditions.
And who's being protected?
I mean, I guess I would say the people in the community are protected from hazards.
Uh-huh.
So be it the property developing it or an adjacent property.
Yeah, I must say that just the use of the word hazard set me back a little bit. I mean, this is not hazard. This is nature.
Right.
You know,
Are we making things,
and you know, as we're learning yesterday, you've got to take nature into account
Yeah.
when you start occupying the land.
but have we run into any issues so far on Bowen with, like, I know we have the stream setbacks and the riparian areas and the setbacks from the ocean.
And there's steep slopes regulations, right?
There are no steep slopes regulations.
I don't know.
Like currently on Bowen, we can at building permit stage, the building inspector can require geotechnical assessment, like if somebody's building on a cliff.
Oh, okay.
But in terms of general development, there's not. So I can think of just my time here, like we had a landslide on Bluff Creek.
Where's that?
In part, it's off Eagle Cliff, right about where the road flooded on Monday.
Right.
Same creek. There was a landslide in part because of sort of uphill development and changes to water courses or changes to drainage at that point. Saturated a slope, and we had a small landslide that came onto Eagle Cliff.
I'm just sort of wondering, do we need this overall, like when we have the ability of the, I don't know, the building inspector, whoever it is, to require geotech already, do we need to spend a bunch of money to run around the island and look for potential problems? Like it just, and then make a lot of noise about it, and then all that's going to happen is they're going to have to do the geotech anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say what's been identified is like the gap is like for general site development. So it's like, it's clear if if you have a building permit for the house, well, we can require geotech, but none of the work leading up to that. So in other words, it's like people putting in the driveway and putting in the septic field and doing the land clearing and whatever else currently on Bowen is not regulated. And so council and the OCP identified that this was a gap that we wanted to regulate to protect hazardous conditions.
Does it also act, would it also act to provide some liability cushion for the municipality? Is that also one of the reasons for wanting to do this? Or, I mean, I was personally involved in a project quite a few years ago now, on the other side of the island for me, where I had to bring in a consultant who I'd worked with on a different project up near Whistler, who's a flood specialist. And we were looking at sea level rise as a function of climate change, and it's a very real thing. And there's a report by a firm called Osenko that looks at sea level rise, and it's going to be like a meter within over the next 50 years. It's kind of all pretty scary stuff. We had to establish flood construction levels for the floors of the house because we're that close to the water. And I could see all of that factoring into these kind of things. And I could see where if the municipality is not prudent in its process, there could be liability issues arising. And I guess that's why I'm sort of wondering, what's driving this.
I'll speak to that for a moment. I mean, this council, this has been something that a couple of councils, an earlier council worked on, they had a sort of steep slopes, and there were really issues around, well, what's steep versus what's hazardous, and it ended up not going anywhere. But I think councils have been looking at this for a fair while, feeling it would be improper or imprudent to not be making sure that we're not destabilizing slopes. And, I mean, we've all seen what's happened in the last couple of days, but that sort of thing. We've got lots of slopes on Bowen. Lots of them are rocky and pretty solid, but there are other places where there's soil on top.
Right.
So is this all leading to a bylaw of some sort, David? Or, I mean, I found the report fascinating reading.
Yeah.
And very informative, and I can imagine that it would be useful to, say, building inspectors or looking at the conditions of a particular site and so on.
Right. So the building inspector doesn't have to sort of be guessing, well, should I be asking for a geotech report on this, or, oh, probably that's too silly. I mean, it systematizes the issue so that it's a little bit more clear.
So that would be the regulatory instrument, that there would be certain situations where a geotech report and potentially a hydrogeological report, if there's water coming off the hill.
Well, yeah, that's what it
would be mandated.
If going through the report, there are various conditions, trigger points, cutting down a certain number of trees and removing a certain amount of soil, all that sort of stuff. So it's in Daniel's report, sort of in the middle of it. Or maybe it's in the consultant's report, I forget.
Is this going to get baked into the building bylaw, or is it actually, it will be separate development permit, or?
It would, yeah, I mean, ultimately, so what, we presented the draft report to council in July. Council referred it to a number of committees, to an open house, which we're just advertising for to do the first week of December. In essence, to gather feedback on that initial step and the proposed development permit map. And those 4 conditions they identified that are hazardous conditions. We'd report back to council, and ultimately it would be a bylaw to do a development permit area with a bylaw to amend the land use bylaw and put those guidelines into the bylaw.
So the end result would be a map of the island that identified the hazardous areas. Is that right? And so anybody either buying land or developing it would know that they were buying in a hazardous area.
And Michael, I had a look at the map, and our area isn't hazardous.
Ah.
So BOMAP already has that for DPA for streams, and shows that mapping, which I've discovered personally is not that accurate. But that's a different conversation. I guess, yeah, I could, when I look at sort of lakes and wetlands, small streams, steep slopes and coastal erosion in coastal areas, that map is going to be largely covered in DP areas.
Yeah, this is something I ran across when we were working on the conservation development policy. Forgotten who it was, Pender Island, I think. One of the islands in the Islands Trust had done a very exhaustive analysis of, they didn't call them hazard, they called them ecologically sensitive areas.
Okay, yeah.
It sounds like you're familiar with it, Daniel. And I remember thinking 2 things at the time. One, is tremendously useful to have. And secondly, my goodness, how difficult and expensive to create it. Because you need all kinds of expert reports, as you say, experts on flooding, experts on what do they call it? The frictive nature of soil. That's in the, anyway, I don't know. I mean, I think this is a good initiative. I'm just not sure what we should be doing except saying, yeah, this is a good initiative, keep going.
It's kind of, in the back eddy of the last few days, it doesn't seem like such a bad idea. I know I've done some work in the SLRD in the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District, and they have they've also got wildfire is something that they've included in their development permits. And it looks at very specific limitations on particular materials that you can use for cladding a building, for instance, and planting of trees and the limbing of trees and getting rid of understory that can become tinder for
Yeah.
fire. So it may be that in the face of an annually or even monthly changing climate scenario, maybe we do need to be more prudent than we have in the past.
Yeah, and I mean, there are lots of other things. We have some friends whose daughter made an offer on a house in Lynn Valley on the North Shore. And when they did their due diligence, they discovered that it was not insured. And the reason it was not insured is that no insurer would touch it because of the landslide potential. So again, that's another, how can I put it, protection for people against their own stupidity.
Right. Well, because that, it's interesting. So, and if that house were to be, if the lot were empty now and one wanted to build on it,
they would not be allowed to. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, my advice was, if there's a landslide, set fire to the house.
Yeah, exactly. It would be very dramatic anyway, this burning house sliding down.
But then you can collect on the fire insurance. Anyway, I guess I really found this fascinating reading, although I did trip over that formula with the TANs and the
Oh, yeah.
QC formula, critical rainfall. Well, that's weird. Critical. So this is the formula that assesses what kind of rainfall you need for a slope to come down, right?
Right. It's what
Okay.
they might have done before the events of the last few days.
Yeah. Well, the timing is pretty impeccable, I must say.
Exactly.
My question is, but how much money are we encouraging the muni to spend on doing all of this mapping and, how much do you have to spend to be useful and how little can you spend to be useful? And because it's really covering such a broad, if really it's just steep slopes that we don't know enough about, then maybe that's what it should be on, as opposed to the streams in the riparian area. And because we don't have any rivers that are going anywhere, we have streams, so it's kind of a different, the beavers are going to cause us more problem than anything else. And seriously.
No, I get your point. We have no floodplains as such.
Oh, so maybe we should just think about narrowing this down to something that is going to actually be useful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say for one is like, when we started this project and when we tasked our scholar with it, we said, okay, what are hazards on Bowen? What can you determine? And I was surprised, I guess, when we came back, but it made sense. It was like, oh, flooding and coastal erosion I hadn't thought of, but they're ones that he identified. But I guess the flip I would say is, on Monday we had a lot of flooding.
Right.
Like, did any of it actually threaten? I mean, I saw Grafton Lake. I mean, that was spectacular, and I saw them threatened.
Definitely, I'd say like people's driveways, people access points were threatened.
Yeah.
The house below the road in Eagle Cliff, I think, would have been. I wouldn't want to be living there. I mean, so is it? I'm trying to understand what council is after, the referral to the APC.
Yeah.
What they're looking for from us. There was a fair amount of material to go through, and I have to say that I wasn't able to wade through it as thoroughly as it sounds that Michael has done. I'm curious about things like, in the report, there seems to be a suggestion, for instance, that the setbacks would be baked in, and it wouldn't be on a site-by-site basis, having a biologist or a geotechnical engineer or a hydrogeologists come to the site and make recommendations about setbacks, that it would simply be, if you're building in this location, the setback is X. Is
I
that,
think, yeah, I think Drew, the setback is to trigger the development permit requirement.
uh-huh,
So it's to be, if you're within the setback, you're required to you're within the development permit area.
I see. So it's not saying that you must be building outside of that zone. This is just saying, if you're interested in working within that zone, you're in a DP area, or
Yeah.
or if that zone comes onto your property, you're in a DP area, basically, irrespective of what you may want to do.
Yeah, it would be if your development takes place in that area, you would get a development permit.
I mean, because the way it works now, if I understand it correctly, if there is a creek near, it's beside your property, there is a blanket, what is it, 10 meters?
30 meter.
30 meters, right, 30 meters on either side of the creek is the riparian zone. And if that zone comes onto your property and you want to do something on your property, you first of all must get a development permit. And and as the homeowner, you must go through you have to retain the RP bio who's going to do the assessment and say, well, for your property, the real setback is going to be 10 meters, not 30. But nevertheless, there are certain things you'll have to do to comply. And so the concept would be to expand that approach to other kinds of development.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's potential, like especially with the stream setback, that in essence people would be in a double. So they would apply for one, but they'd be applying for a stream development permit area and a hazard development permit.
Right.
So all of this, and I don't disagree with the safety side of things, but unless you have an incredibly finite and expensive plan, you're going to include a whole bunch of properties that just are, might be hazardous, and then that's going to cause more costliness to develop anything. And is that what I think we need to think about everything that we add in and how costly it's going to be for anybody to do anything or build anything.
Well, my take on it is that we have to be careful not to make the political decision, which appears to be that council would like hazardous areas, would like some kind of coherence and regulation of hazardous areas. But I think if we have a recommendation, it's for consideration of exactly what impact this will have on developers. How cogent is it? I mean, are we talking about the whole Darn Island or just very similar limited areas? And then the practical thing of once those decisions are made, what does it look like? Does it look like new setbacks? Does it look like new requirements for technical reports? So that's how I would send it back, probably to staff rather than council, to consider those issues.
Yeah, I agree, Michael.
That makes sense.
Obviously, after setbacks, you said, what does it look like? New setbacks? And what?
Oh, yeah. I was just riffing. I have no idea what I said. No,
Yeah.
just kidding.
I
I think we're concerned that this might bite off more than can be chewed, if I put it that way. So our concern is that our concerns are practical concerns as regulators of development.
Maybe can I ask a sort of related question there, Daniel? I imagine that you did some shopping around before you retained the UBC student to do the work, and that you probably went to other municipalities and so on to see what others were doing. Are hazardous area development permit areas pretty common in municipalities currently? And are they as extensive as the four proposed?
like probably if you were to look at every municipality, probably on balance, more of them don't than do, but they're not uncommon. Often they're triggered after a certain, like after an event, then they'll come in. So like the District of North Van had that mudslide, whenever it was now, a decade ago maybe, and now they have quite stringent hazardous area development permit.
Right.
So our interim CAO, who was interim before Liam, so Dennis Beck was the CAO in District of North Van. So he had many stories about them bringing in their development permit area.
And things may change after the past few days.
Yeah.
In other areas.
One way of handling this, Drew, might be to recommend that the report be implemented at the minimum level required to guarantee safety. Which actually, again, that throws the ball back.
Oh,
We lost Michael.
that was such a good thought.
He was.
Yeah.
Me and the mouse. You just fall off the chair.
You're getting a little bit. I'm
Yeah.
sure how your connection is to other stuff. You're right. Is Michael trying to get back in?
Your audio is very odd, Steph.
Yeah. You went all crackly.
Croaky.
Oh, David's gone to rescue Michael.
Uh-huh. Did they live right next door?
I don't know if they're next door, but they live close to each other.
Right. Oh, you're muted there, David.
Yeah, there's no lights in their house. It looks like they lost their power.
Oh,
Yeah.
And we're very good at losing power around here. But normally, of course, it hits all of us at the same time. So
Uh-huh.
I'm not quite sure what's going on.
Maybe it's a kind of subtle underhanded support for this this development permit area.
We've probably lost quorum now, probably.
We lost quorum. Yeah.
Lost quorum now too, yes. Dan, what?
Phone him, Steph, and see whether.
I'll phone Michael.
Got a cell phone number?
I'll just try. Just a sec.
Thanks, David.
So like the bylaw,
Your audio is not good.
Understand what you're saying still. If you could turn your video off, your audio will be stellar. You never know.
Can't hear it.
No, we got nothing.
No. From Steph to everyone, that the Advisory Planning Commission recommend that the bylaw be implemented to where's the chart here? The minimum degree required to guarantee safety. Well, is there a bylaw at this point?
Yeah, it's not. We don't have a bylaw.
There's Michael's coming back. I think he's coming back.
But a minimum lever guarantee safety is a bit of a high bar, guarantee.
I'm just starting the. I'm riffing.
Screen sharing.
Okay. Sorry about that. I had to restart my computer.
We thought you lost power because a sudden environmental event occurred.
Okay, how about minimum degree? Yeah, I think the guarantee is a bit scary. It gives rise to lawsuits. To address safety, that's good. Yeah. Provide the following.
I think there's always this kind of balance that we seem to be looking for. On the one hand, not wanting to become overly bureaucratic, that the processes for building a home on Bowen don't become so heavy-handed and bureaucratic and costly before you ever pick up a hammer, that nothing ever happens here, and people are dissuaded from coming to the island to begin with.
No, I agree with you.
To being
People-
to being the other end of the spectrum where, it's all easy peasy until somebody, gets hurt.
Yeah, there was some experiences in Edmonton where people built houses very close to ravines and creeks, and the river itself. The houses slid into the river, and they turned around and sued the city for letting them do it. But yeah,
So,
and I mean, right. The other thought that occurs to me, I understand it already takes a long time anyway to get a building permit. If we start adding more requirements, that's just going to lengthen the amount of time.
Yes, and I just am worried about, they can either do a broad brush approach for not very much money to designate what areas need the special, everything is that here needs a setback of this and that, or they can, and that's cheap, and then everybody, all lots are going to be included for some reason or other, or it's very, very, they walk all of the property to really check it over and decide which one should be included in the area, and then that gives the PhD student a huge amount of income, and but maybe some houses are left out of the unsafe area requiring extra permits. I'm not explaining it very well, but
It's not clear to me that we're actually at a place where is the intention here, Daniel, I understand this report was providing background to council and municipality about these kinds of hazards and what kind of framework could be set up, rather than actually sort of using this report and saying we're going to implement the report as a development permit trigger.
Yeah, what the process we envision is sort of this referral to committees and then coming back to council, probably at a committee of the whole, to discuss sort of the feedback from the committees and from the public on the report and on a potential development permit area.
Mhm.
And then, if council then wants to proceed and direct staff to actually draft a bylaw, then we would draft a bylaw and probably take that bylaw then to the committees and say, okay, based on the report and based on feedback, this is what would be in a proposed bylaw. And then
Right.
you as the APC would have a chance to comment on the actual bylaw and the details in it, and what exactly needs a development permit and what's exempt or whatever.
Right.
Well,
So we're in the early stages here. We're not
Yeah.
looking to bylaw.
Okay, so instead of the motion what we're really saying is that, our commentary is that they could, not to recommend or anything like that, just that that consideration be given to the elements identified in the report that would address, we're just asking that these things be considered, right?
I think there's a couple of things here, Michael, if I may.
Oh, yeah, sure. More than
I
one,
think
but
the first thing is scope.
Yeah.
The report identifies 4 particular kinds of hazard, distinct kinds of hazard, and suggests that each one of those could form a development permit area.
Mhm.
And currently we already have one. I guess the small streams is actually the existing DPA, Daniel, if I'm not mistaken. So it's adding three more criteria for development permits. And
isn't there already setback from the ocean though too? Don't we have that?
yeah, this is slightly different. This has to do with coastal erosion and flooding. And the setbacks from the ocean are not about that per se. Although this includes a setback, but it also includes an FCL reference 5 meters above the level of the natural boundary. So there's kind of two elements here. One is the notion that and if you have a king tide and you have a storm event and you have storm surge, you add all of these things together, you suddenly have a pretty high sea condition that you wouldn't normally have, and that the floor of your house should be above that. And that's not captured in the idea of how far your house is set back from where the water stops. So it's a little bit different. And I guess I think from a safety perspective, all of these things sort of make sense to me, and I can even see including some notions about wildfires and how that's going to be addressed further down the road as well. Because that as we have more development, we have more homes, we have more stuff to protect, and our the fire department's limited resources as well. So so I think in terms of the scope, I kind of feel, for me, I kind of feel like it's okay. And I do recognize that there's potential for this to have create a financial burden for people wanting to build. So I don't know that there's an easy way around that.
Okay. I just wrote down 3 things here as summarizing what I've heard anyway. Consider the minimum requirements to address safety in property development. Take into account existing bylaws and policies that address these hazards, because I don't think the report does that. And finally, consider the impact on expense and timely development that regulation for hazards will have.
I think that's great, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get all that, Steph? I think I'm just summarizing what you guys are saying.
That certainly reflects my feelings.
Yeah. I'm not sure how you do it all, but I like it.
Well, we don't have to do it. We just have to recommend it.
That's right. Exactly. No, but I think it's good. I think it gives council some things to consider.
So you have minimum.
Yeah, consider the minimum requirements for safety.
Okay.
Yeah. Take into account existing bylaws and policies that address these hazards. And maybe just instead of take into account, that's really what we're doing all the time. The impact on expense and timing of development. Timing of development would be fine. Yeah.
So I want to raise one more issue here, and this is, I mean, this is useful as because I'm a council member. I'll see all this coming to council, but from my own comments on it, obviously the emphasis on safety is important, but to me, there's more than that. Because if you're let's say you're cutting some trees or reducing the protection around a stream or on a slope that's somewhat steep, it's not just that it's going to come down on your house, but if you're destabilizing a slope and water's running around, it can end up washing out roads and culverts and all that sort of stuff. So it's not safety, it's infrastructure damage as well by weakening slopes.
Okay.
And so I'm worried about, I mean, that's one of the things that we've seen happen in the last couple of days. And I know that Bowen Island has a lot of culverts. It's one of the things we're looking at figuring out how to replace when they wear out. But when they get overused or jammed with a bunch of debris, bad things can happen very, very quickly. when you get big rainstorms, and we're going to get more big rainstorms. So
Yeah.
I'm a little bit worried about the focus on safety and the word minimal.
So when Michael said safety, I did not immediately leap to the conclusion that he's talking about safety for the homeowner or safety for the developer.
Okay.
I was considering in a broader sense, safety
Yeah.
to others as well, right?
Yeah, and maybe we could add that to it, and we could take minimal out. It's just that I think
get
we
your
are
point.
concerned that if we do it exhaustively,
Yeah.
As Drew said, nobody's going to build we're essentially sterilizing those parcels of land.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not a bad thing. I don't know. The minimum safety. Well, why don't you say safety of the property owner and the community?
Yeah, or
Yeah.
people and infrastructure or whatever.
Yeah, fine.
That'll do it. Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I don't know. Minimum is still means adequate, right? If you know what
Yeah.
I mean. It's
It's don't overdo it, to my mind.
we could change it to reasonable if you like.
Okay, requirements.
I mean, they're all judgments, of course. Like a minimum for one person will be different from the next, as will reasonable. I really,
But I guess our feedback is that we don't want to go overboard on it,
Yeah,
really. That's what we want to give to council.
yeah,
I think the way Steph's going with it now is probably better.
That looks good. Yeah.
Requirements for safety of people and infrastructure be considered. Maybe that's just enough, just like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, just like that.
Stop.
Because a requirement is a minimum, right? You know,
Yeah.
in the
That's-
sense that
and that becomes much more clear. Yeah,
okay,
Yeah. That's
take into
kinda like-
account existing bylaws,
Yeah.
which the report doesn't really do, and take into account the.
Yeah.
Okay, and
So when you say that, David, you mean to say, let's tease apart the ones that are already in place from ones that we might do, and let's focus on what we might do, because the other ones are already there, or what's your?
you mean on the existing bylaws? I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to understand that. So bullet number 2.
I'm comfortable with that. Yeah,
And I'm just trying to understand the thrust of it, which is like, for me, the way I read that is, well, there's already a DPA for streams, so we don't need to redo that, or is the stream provision in the report different from what's being done now?
I think. Yeah, I think that's it. Am I muted? No, I think that covers that. That be taken into account, and you might say, yep, our stream protection is sufficient. It'll actually handle this. Or you might say, well, maybe it won't in some circumstances or whatever, but it means it's taken into account.
Right.
Or do you want to explore or something? Or
no, I think that's good.
Yeah, I think it's good.
okay.
Because this is just guidance back on the next steps that council may take.
That's right. Yeah.
So Daniel, apart from North Vancouver and the very good example you gave, the regional districts and municipalities that have more extensive DPAs like this, is it related to the size and sophistication of the municipality, or resources, or what? Why do some have none and others have lots? And do you have any sense about that?
Yeah, I don't think I have a sense, other than, yeah, to some extent, like size and sophistication. So hence, like, North Shore municipalities have some form of hazardous areas development permit areas. More rural places probably don't as much.
It
Well,
may
also-
depend, it may, sorry, Kristen.
I was just gonna say, North Van has had histories of development in the wrong area, and their North Van and West Van are full of steep slopes that is in private hands and can be developed, whereas an awful lot of our steep slopes is crown land, really.
Yeah, and it may all just depend on how much hazardous area you have in a particular municipality. I mean, of course, I guess Merritt probably wasn't too concerned about that until yesterday.
Oh, Merritt has been flooded over the hundreds of years many times.
Yeah, okay. I
In
didn't
very
realize
different, but yeah, and they built there, but I know my great grandparents' farm is in the river,
that.
but that was a long time ago, and the whole farm washed away.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah, I'd like it, yeah.
All right, so how does that feel, Daniel? Is that going to give you something to go back with?
Yeah, I think that's great.
But can we have that tomorrow then?
Once I get the letter, I think we'll be.
Right. I'll draft it tonight.
All right. Thanks, John.
Okay. No, I reiterate, I found that absolutely fascinating reading, and
Good.
things that I hadn't thought about. But
I think Drew, you're the one who's taking us to the bridge on this boat. No,
What was that stuff?
boat.
Vote.
Vote. That's not what I heard. Oh, we need to have a vote. Okay, we're doing. So now we have a vote. Police. There we go. It's clear now.
yeah, I thought she was saying boat, and you
Yeah, I
talking
did
about
too.
floods and things like that. So,
Exactly.
well, I'll make a motion
all right. Thank you, Michael.
as set out there.
Excellent. And
Agree.
Seconder. Kirsty's gonna-
Thursday, I guess.
Okay, then we have a. Then it's carried.
okay.
I thought we
All
didn't
in
identify
favor?
movers and seconders in minutes.
I don't think we do.
No.
Yeah, so people, yeah.
It's going to disappear.
Okay, great.
All right. Let's see. Not doing too, well, not too bad, but we're a little bit behind Steph's timing on my agenda, but so I think that's it for item 5 then. Island plan information items. Was that something from you, Daniel? Or
No,
Steph?
it's just I think that's always there.
Always there. There's always a 2021 island plan.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right.
Nice that we have one.
Indeed. Do we have, are there more things coming to the APC down the pike here, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm like, I don't think I have anything going.
Oh,
No, maybe I do.
I looked at the agenda for Monday's meeting, and we've received comments on the conservation development policy.
Yeah.
That let's just say the comments are longer than the original.
Oh,
There's a lot for us to work on,
okay.
and I
have that going to council, and I have a rezoning going to council as well, but
yeah,
I think
but
I'm
I have
recommending
to I have to figure council is going to punt that one back to us.
Right.
You didn't hear that, David.
I saw that it was on the agenda, but I didn't, I haven't opened it and had a look yet. But I was at one of the meetings where the comments were several feet worth of paper.
Yes, we have to worry about green dendritic aspects.
Yeah, exactly.
But
All right.
but you know what? Fair enough. We'll work through it.
This is David's kind of the thing that he's championing at the moment. So we want to make sure we get have a good go at it.
Yeah, I think it's headed towards us again.
All right, fair enough. Forewarned is whatever.
Yeah.
We'll look for the next meeting when it arrives. In which case, do I have a motion to adjourn? Michael, and we don't need a seconder on that one, but thank you, Kirsty.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
didn't leap in time to say, move it. Yeah.
There you
Okay.
go. All right.
Great.
We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, Steph.
Have a good evening, the rest of the evening.
Night, everyone.
Good night.